Folks, the Video Game History Foundation library is now open wherever you are. We're starting to roll out digital access to our collections of video game history material, and they're free for everyone to access right now. If you're new here, you might be wondering who we are and why we're doing this. The Video Game History Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to making video game history better. Thanks to the support of generous donors like you, we've been able to push game history and game preservation to the next level. We're fighting for reforms to help make video game history more accessible, and working with members of the game industry to celebrate and preserve its legacy. And for the last 8 years, we've been building an archive filled with the kind of stuff researchers need to understand the history of video games. Things like game development materials, press kits, artwork, media coverage, memorabilia, and more. And we want you to be able to use it. Whether you're writing a book or just making a video, you're a researcher, and we want you to have access to the information that will make your research better, without having to fly out here to California to see it. Our solution is our digital library. Last winter, we put out a video showing you how the library system works. If you want, you can check that out right now. Today, we're launching the first wave of open access content in our library. There's some pretty exciting collections we're kicking off with, along with over 1,500 out-of-print video game magazines. Let's take a quick look at what you'll be able to see first, and how we're turning this physical library into a digital resource. First off, we're going to talk about our collections of development materials, and this is the really juicy stuff. We think the best way to study video game history is to have access to materials from the making of games. Things like development documents, scripts, source code, original artwork, video footage, team photos, even something like meeting notes that can tell you how video games got made and sold. So we've been working with members of the game development community to capture and preserve their work. Our flagship collection is the Mark Flitman Papers. Mark is a retired game producer who had an amazing run in the 90s and 2000s working for publishers like Konami, Acclaim, Midway, and Atari. He wasn't the one programming or usually designing the games, but he was the one who made sure they got done. If you want to know about the business of making video games, Mark's collection has everything. Budgets, marketing plans, licensing guides, charts, angry memos about deadlines, and 5 minutes of Macho Man Randy Savage losing his mind in a recording that Mark Flitman made for a wrestling game in the 90s.
Oh yeah, it's the Macho Man. Everybody get ready to get down. It's party time, because we're going to do the thing in the ring. Oh yeah!
We'll have plenty to share about Mark's story in the future, but that's not all we have from game developers. You might have seen our video last year about the lost levels of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. All that original art from artist Tom Payne is part of our library, along with art from other games, like the original character concepts from the cult hit GameCube skateboarding game Go Go Hypergrind. And we are especially proud to have preserved over 100 hours of video from the making of the Myst series by developer Cyan, including never-before-seen interviews with the developers. Cyan has been a big believer in our mission, and they've been unbelievably generous about opening their vault for us. And for you.
Quite demanding. Please do not signal me unless you've done
Next, we're going to show you some things that you might not think of as traditional research sources. A lot of the time, the things around video games can tell us more about the games than the games themselves. We love context here, and we've got some pretty good context for you. For starters, we've digitized the first 100 CDs from our massive collection of art and press materials from GamePro magazine. If you were a game publisher, CDs like these are how you would send artwork, screenshots, and press releases to game magazines. And the folks at GamePro held onto almost everything they were sent. Many of these were in obsolete digital formats that there's no good way for most people to read on a modern device. So we did our best getting them into a format you can view in your browser. But don't worry, we kept the originals too. And we digitized some of our guidebooks from E3, the Electronic Entertainment Expo. E3s were huge events for video game promotion, and if you've ever tried researching an E3, you know how hard it is to figure out who was showing off what at the event. These books have lists of every single booth and every single company at the show. This is the most complete record you'll probably ever find of E3 short of having a time machine. I was just flipping through one of these books and I saw a listing for a game called Pretzel Pete by Stealth Productions. I've never heard of this before, but I guess it was shown at E3 1999. What the hell was Pretzel Pete? I needed to know. Well, that sent me down a research rabbit hole. I searched for Pretzel Pete in our library system, and one of the only other places it's ever mentioned is in an issue of PC Gamer from 1999. And that's what we're talking about last today, video game magazines. Game magazines are a great way to learn about what was happening in the video game industry and what people were saying about games back in the day. So we wanted our magazine collections to be searchable and well cataloged. Now, we saved this part of the video for last because this might sound really simple, but you're not going to believe how much work this took to get right. The gaming community has already been scanning tons of video game magazines over the years. So for our library, we set out to build on what the community has already done. Many of the scans in our library were provided by community groups, like RetroMags and Out of Print Archive. We also invested in new infrastructure to do our own high-quality scans in-house. When we get a duplicate copy of a magazine to scan, we debind it and feed the pages through this ridiculously powerful scanner, which can scan something close to 50 pages per minute at archival quality. But having a bunch of images doesn't mean we have a good resource for researchers, and that's what this is all about, making something that's going to be useful for video game history research. We wanted all of our magazines to be full-text searchable, and that's a lot harder than it sounds. The software that makes it possible to search through a magazine scan, generally speaking, is designed to work on plain documents. We're talking high-contrast text, dark fonts on light backgrounds, something that might come out of your home printer. Not whatever this is. If you've ever read a 90s video game magazine, you know how crazy those magazine layouts get. Text recognition for documents has a real problem with text like this. In order to fix that, our director of technology spent months developing a next-generation text recognition tool that handles even the toughest magazine pages with no problem. It's a significant leap in quality over what we had before. Just look here. Here's an example. Here's that page we just saw. This is from a magazine called Die Hard Game Fan. This is what most text recognition software sees, and here's what our system got. It's night and day. There's just no comparison. We didn't want to launch the library until we got this right. And thanks to all these new tools, video game magazines are a better resource for studying game history than they ever have been before. This is just the beginning. Our digital library is the long-term home for our collections, and over the coming years, we're going to keep building the library and adding new material. We have a whole storage room full of stuff we have to keep processing, so there is plenty to come. We've been building towards this for a long time, and we think this is going to change how people study video game history. But you don't have to take our word for it. We gave some of our friends an early preview of the library system, and they seem to like it too.
The Video Game History Foundation Library is a tremendous resource for my research. Being able to look at magazines, press releases, developer documents, and advertisements that are all in one place and fully searchable, I'm able, as a historian, to see the history of that game in a new way.
A big priority for my research is presenting unknown video game history in an entertaining and accessible way. So for me, the Video Game History Foundation Library isn't just a valuable educational archive, but a great tool for finding and sharing fun surprises.
So I'm so excited about all the cool business and workplace documents you can search through. I can look at everything from expense reports to company Christmas cards, photographs of work trips. It's the kind of stuff that, as a labor and business historian, really makes my work possible.
One of the most interesting things for me is that they're collecting player-made ephemera. I can only do my research because of the work that sociologists and archivists did in the 1960s. So what the VGHF is doing now, it's going to be a hugely important resource for researchers and historians in the future.
At Digital Eclipse, we start every one of our interactive documentary games with a huge deep dive into the research, and to just have this all at our fingertips for design documents and press releases and internal stuff and magazines, it's incredible.
The big thing when it comes to trying to piece together the history of video games and how they get made and how people felt at the time is finding these elements in the first place. Having a lot of that work done by the professionals at the Video Game History Foundation, this is going to very quickly become an invaluable resource. It feels primed to change how people create videos and books going forward.
This is the coolest thing ever. They have like 15 hours of stuff from the production of Riven. I'm going to watch all of it, and there's just a tape. It's a Buck and Bumble written on it. This is the best thing ever.
We can't let the archives for magazines or game production history lie in the hands of companies because, for the most part, they don't value that information in the same way a historian does. It's incredible to have a trustworthy source like this available to anybody who is interested in gaming history. Thank you, Video Game History Foundation!
You can access our library right now at library.gamehistory.org. There's so much exciting material in here, so stay tuned to this channel and our blog because we're going to be taking a deeper dive into these collections in the future. We like to joke that we're a library startup, which isn't really a thing, and building a new digital archive system is a daunting project. We're using tools that are used by academic libraries and museums, but we want this to be accessible to everybody. Let us know what you think, because there will definitely be more changes to our system coming down the road. Your ongoing support is what makes projects like this library possible. If you like what we're doing here and you want to see it keep growing, please consider supporting us at gamehistory.org/donate, or joining our Patreon community at patreon.com/gamehistoryorg. And if you're a game developer who held onto a box of old discs or papers and you want them to be preserved like this, hey, get in touch with us at info@gamehistory.org. But for now, I've got some more cataloging to do, so we'll see you at the library.